Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Hello, and welcome back to this episode of Meanwhile Here on Earth on KGRA Digital Broadcasting with me, your host, Peter Robbins. If you are listening to the show, but would rather be watching it, easy enough. Just go to YouTube and enter KGRA, then Meanwhile Here on Earth. You can also access all previous broadcasts at that link. Become a KGRA subscriber so that you can listen or watch anything and everything in their huge archive and inventory. Hundreds of shows with dozens of the best hosts ever. And before we get started, why am I wearing a sports jacket? Well, because I knew our guests, and we have two guests tonight, were going to look sharp, and I couldn't let them look much sharper than I do. But don't get used to it. This is a pre-recorded show. The reason being that our guests are in England, and under the Geneva Conventions, it seemed right and appropriate that they shouldn't have to complete our conversation at 2 a.m. their time. Our guest for tonight, Philip Kinsella, is both a clairvoyant medium and UFO investigator author. Having had many bizarre UFO and paranormal experiences throughout his life, along with his identical twin brother Ronald, he began to research the phenomena on a serious level of investigations after an alien abduction in 1989. This led to him writing several books: Reaching for the Divine, How to Communicate Effectively with Your Spirit Guides and Loved Ones on the Other Side; Believe, Bridging the Gap Between the Psychic and UFO Phenomena; and Sky Crash Throughout Time, a continued investigation into the Rendlesham UFO mystery. This book, the original Sky Crash, a classic in the field and the very first book on the subject, was written with co-author UFO investigator Brenda Butler. Brenda, we hope you're feeling better. We know your health has taken a hit, but you are coming back, and we love you, and I hope to see you in August when I'm back in the UK. I hope. This book has been, again, co-authored with Brenda and published by Campbell Bann Publishing Limited in England. Philip also wrote another book, which he brought out through Amazon, entitled A Passage Through Eternity: The Enigma of the Dead, UFOs, and Aliens. Philip won the British Mediumship Award in Portsmouth, England in 2008. Although he had no wish to become what is referred to as a medium, he was nonetheless intrigued in the thought of the deceased being able to communicate with the living. His understanding is that the human brain serves merely as a conduit for the flow of information and alternate realities which exist all around us and which often we cannot see. This all came about through his own personal struggles in search for those he had loved and lost through death. Although dealing with both aspects of UFOs and mediumship, he has always felt there is a connection. This has been illustrated within his books. He has appeared on national television in the UK, most notably Channel 4, Central, Live and Digital, and has also hosted many radio programs. He, along with his brother Ronnie, have also written and illustrated children's books and had published a science fiction novel entitled The Ungodly Agenda, which has been endorsed by the best-selling author of Cocoon, David Saperstein. As many of you know, this was made into a smash Hollywood movie in 1996. Philip has a revolutionary theory published in the magazine Alien Encounters, which dealt with the revolutionary theory regarding the Greys. This was entitled Spirits in a Material World. Through his initial abduction he'd had back in 1989, he was determined to piece the evidence together in establishing what had happened to him. This led to a whole new understanding of what a certain faction of Greys may represent. His theory deals with cloning, the soul, and the dangers inherent should we proceed with this ourselves on a spiritual level. Philip, along with his brother, co-host a radio show for the Paranormal UK Radio called Twin Souls, where they interview many authors, experiencers, investigators of all topics within the world of the bizarre. One of his UFO experience has been caught on camera. This occurred on the 9th of April 2016, around 11:15 p.m. at night, and has been recorded and analyzed as unknown. He is currently working on more books surrounding the UFO field of investigations. Ronald Kinsella is Philip Kinsella's identical twin, being also the author of numerous books, mainly science fiction, as well as being a highly accomplished digital artist. And I can't state that strongly enough. He also co-authored a book with the leading UK ufologist Philip Mantle entitled Introducing UFOs, aimed at the younger market. Science fiction is his passion, and he has created, along with his brother, a mechanical dog character called Magnus the Micromutt, which was first conceived for comic book ideas. In 1993, at the time of his inception, Magnus was considered too radical for such a venture. Nevertheless, after interest from a video game production company, along with a movie, failed to take off, the twins put him on hold until recently, releasing the dog as an adventure book for kids. The integrity of Ronald's copyright was tested during the turn of the new century, though of which he was subsequently settled in his favor. These business ventures armed the twins with caution, knowing the dangers ahead regarding commercial pursuits. Ronald has contributed art to other books and fanzines, also featuring in the pages of Chris Everett's Outer Limits magazine. His art has appeared on U.S. cable TV and on several DVDs relating to the paranormal. As mentioned, Ronald co-hosts I think it's a monthly radio show with Philip under the title of Twin Souls. Yes, it is monthly. He is currently researching a book concerning the Mayan civilization based on the deity Kukulkan. Philip and Ronnie, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. And may I say, it's wonderful to finally have you both on the show. It's something I've been looking forward to very much. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's wonderful and an honor to be on your show.
Certainly is. Thank you, Peter.
Now, before we begin, in my devious little mind, I was thinking, as identical twins, you share the same physiology. This has nothing to do with anything except my larcenous little mind. Does that mean that you have the same sets of fingerprints?
I don't think so. I don't think we do. Yeah, that might be the only thing we don't have.
Well, I need a confirmation of that. So get out your ring pads after the show and check them out. Not that I would encourage this, but, if there was somebody that one of you wanted to murder and pin it on the other brother, although I don't see that happening, it's just a thought that I had to get out of my system, and now it's out. So there we go. We have been friends for quite some time, although we hardly get to see each other, but we are certainly very connected. And the focus of this show has been, in great part, not just on great contributors in the field of UFO studies, experiences, abductions, and the paranormal, but how you became the people you became. So I'd like to start at the beginning and ask you, if you would, to tell us where in England were you born?
Well, our early memory was from a place called Bignell House, which is in Bicester, just outside Oxfordshire. And
Okay.
we remembered that, as kids, we were brought up in this grand, opulent grounds of this mansion. And my parents lived in the servants' quarters because my mother helped within the running of the home that belonged to Dr. Thomas Gregory and his wife Marge, that were absolutely beautiful and wonderful people. And one of the interesting things we found out much later in our life, when we went back to research the property of Bignell House, was that it had been constructed by the ascendants of Sir Francis Drake. Now, yeah, and but it was beautiful. I mean, it had an outdoor swimming pool with a fox, a huge stone fox, that its head was used as a diving board. They had tennis courts, a trout stream, and it was just a beautiful place. And those are some of the fondest memories that we had, even as young kids. Growing up in this very, because we thought at that time that we were rich. But
one might.
Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. So, but this is the earliest memories that we have of being kids. Yeah.
It's such a, especially for an American, such a beautiful, stately, romantic location. One would only imagine that it was haunted. Did you have any experiences to that effect here?
Yes, there were a few that I do recall most definitely that occurred within the surrounding area. One of those was of not finding myself outside of the house with a small being next to me that people call a grey. I remembered it was it must have been a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. I can't remember which. It was the weekend because our maternal grandparents were coming to visit us. I remembered that there was a fog and this smell that I can only describe as like a cheesy, like the old books used to open and used to smell the cardboard. And I remembered feeling, well, I should be indoors, I shouldn't be here. And it's like the entity next to me was trying to show me what the room that I'd come from. And another occasion, I found that I was in the small wood in daytime again and seeing a big yellow tractor in the wood and wondering how the tractor got in there. Of course, the tractor was never in there. So there were a lot of strange things that did occur with us.
There was also, our mother told us, Peter, that very strange. It's interesting you should mention about being haunted, because she actually, she's like us and yourself and many others, level-headed, but the property was off ground, so it wasn't near any road, and there was no traffic around, but or people for that matter, only her and us. I think the people who owned the mansion were out, and she told us in this cottage where we stayed that at night when she took Philip and I up in bed, she could hear footsteps running along the passage upstairs. She could hear it, and she was so angry because she thought we're out of bed. She went upstairs, but there was nothing there. We were in our beds. Now it's funny how it's never really talked about, but if we ask or mentioned in hearsay, that's how it was. We learnt of that incident. But I gather you're absolutely right. It is haunted. There's something very strange about that place. Very, very weird about it, although it is beautiful.
And just to end on that note, for many years later, I used to have this reoccurring dream with these stone circles and a tower in the middle. And when I'm in the dream, I have to find the correct sequence of stones before I can enter the tower. And on the last time that the dream happened, it must have been about probably 10 years ago, and it stopped. I couldn't open my eyes, and I let the dream play out. I drew it on a piece of paper, and I said, "Mum, do you know what this place is?" And she said, "Yes." She said, "I used to take you past there every day. It was on the property of Bignell House. So perhaps we're only theorizing something else happened that I'm not aware of, and it may be locked. We don't know."
Say to Peter as well that something which is vague, but I will report it anyway. Philip and I were in one part of the woodland, and we were picking these flowers or pods. They looked to us as little toddlers. They looked like little seeds, and we were opening them up. And I know it sounds ridiculous, and haven't recorded this in my new book because I want to be 100% certain. But this little tiny bug jumped out and became huge.
Oh,
and
my.
yeah, and Philip and I remembered it, and it was like, it looked like, as we would call, a prayer mantis, but it didn't speak. We were terrified because it was like an insect. So when it moved, it created a buzzing or a blur. It was blurry. We were terrified. We just ran from it. But the next thing, we were eating ice cream. So, and we had a Labrador, golden Labrador. He was our pet Prince, and he was always pinching our ice creams off us. That was his payment for protecting us, for looking after us. But he wasn't there when this thing was there. We never saw him. But it's very strange, the property. Yes, very haunting. I mean, that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it seems that people that buy it don't stay there very long. So that might be saying something, Pete.
Well, I'd like to have it. I'd move in there.
I would go back if we had the money.
Oh, yes.
Growing up in this beautiful, stately home, were you in regular proximity with other children? Were you already going to school at that time? Or did you find yourselves being your own primary playmates?
Well, we were always together when we were younger, and there was a very small school that we had gone to. And the school itself was, this teacher, I can only recall her vaguely with wearing these horn ring glasses. And, she would make sure that you spoke the Queen's English, as it were. So people often say to us as twins, well, they're very well spoken. And I say to them, well, we weren't born with a silver spoon in our mouth. We were taught how to speak. And of course,
we were from a working class. Yes. Basically, it was the way people spoke then.
Yes.
It's the way, when we look at old video footage of the 70s and 80s or 60s, 70s, they do speak like that. I think it's been forgotten, or the young now don't realize that that's the way we all were then. It's just one of those things.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Unlike most Americans, I've visited the UK more than 20 times over the years, and really from top to bottom. And as in the States, and I'm sure many countries, regional accents and dialects vary wildly. And as a boy, there's a very famous musical comedy in America based on George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion. I'm sure you're aware of it, My Fair Lady. And I remember we had the original cast album, and a wonderful song that is impossible not to memorize was Rex Harrison, not so much singing, but saying the lyrics in a song-like way, called "Why Can't the English?" And it's basically, why can't the English teach their children how to speak these verbal, and of course, we do judge people by their dialects and accents. You grew up outside of Oxfordshire, most famous for Oxford University, which has its own distinct, not posh, but certainly intellectual language. But yet, X number of miles outside of town, it's much more colloquial. And again, the way that we use language can completely isolate us or give us opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise. So it's interesting that your teacher felt that this was important, because it certainly is. At what point in your young lives did you realize, you knew you were identical twins, and I'm sure that was explained to you. There are fraternal twins, there are people, who are not born twins, etc. But there was another dimension to your siblingship, namely that you were deeply connected in terms of communicating non-verbally, which, if it happens to a young person, it's simply the way things are. But of course, it's not usually the way things are between people. Do you remember a point as children when you realized that you were connected like this and it was not standard?
Yes, I do. I think we had a secret. It's interesting to say about the communication without talking. Philip and I actually had a secret language. and we didn't know anything about twins or them having language, because when we were young, you had no internet, no. All you had was a library. I didn't read. I was a bit lazy when I was younger. He was the academic. I was a bone idle. But we had a secret language. We found out later on that actually this is quite common with twins. So yes, you're right. We could just
we would make
just,
a sound.
A sound. It's non-verbal. It's acoustic, but it's a sound we would make to define someone.
Yes.
As characterizing someone, like a professor, or someone who's stuck up, or someone who's common, or someone, it's just being humorous. We're not being cruel. It's just one of those things as children, you have fun. So
Sure.
we had this language over 100 sounds, and also we just have to look at each other.
And we
will know.
We'll know. We'll look at each other. We've got a certain way of looking, and that it's the way we do it that we know what we're both thinking about whomever we're discussing. Of course, we're adults now. We don't do that now. I think primarily
We do sometimes.
You have all kinds of words to use rather than just sound.
But I think it was magical, and I think that that element of language, of connection with one another, we were frightened of the world, and to a degree both of us still are, and I think that's what brought us closer together as not just identical twins, but because we were very wary of the world, and we were looking at the world and trying to understand what we were dealing with in terms of where we were. When I was younger, I said to my mum, I said, where was I before I was? And she looked at me and she said, in the womb. And I said, no. I said, where was I before I was? But we are blessed with we are blessed, and we were blessed because some of our dear family, like other family members around the world, have passed on with a family that understood or kind of like protected us in this very close-knit circuit that we had.
Just going to say that it's an added plus, really, Peter, being a twin, because you have someone to fall back on.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, like we were saying, I mean, if there's a bully at school and this actually happened, they'd belt the wrong one. So he got most of the belting.
And I
got away with it.
And I'll tell you, Peter, as well, we were bought these outfits, and I never wanted to be a cowboy. I wanted to be a North American Indian. And of course, yes, we had these, and this is the truth of God. We had these outfits that were of the North American Indians, and I loved it. I never wanted to be a cowboy. I wanted to be a North American Indian, and I reckon that was an early start to much more complex understandings of what was happening way in the future.
You can guess that I wanted to be the cowboy to shoot him. I even had my own it was a cast iron gun, die cast gun. I even had that. And I had an imaginary horse called Nero, and while he was prancing around in his feathered suit chanting, I was aiming my gun at him.
Yes, and it ended with me very badly, Peter.
Repeatedly badly, yes.
Because I walked on barefoot in my North American Indian outfit on a load of stinging nettles being cut. And I remembered
you had the worst of it, didn't you?
Yeah, and I remembered being put in a sink with my feet bathing and crying.
I think a lot of Americans don't realize the impact of our popular culture on other parts of the world. And I'm old enough to have grown up in a time when, yes, we played cowboys and Indians as well. But due to the popularity, I think, of American Western films and to a degree, American Western television series, this became a phenomena that expanded beyond our borders. Your mother, my picture of her in my mind is that besides being a wonderful woman, she's a remarkable woman. Can you tell us some things about your mom?
Yes, our mother is very much a lovely lady, a beautiful lady, and she's always stuck by us and always been there for us both. And throughout our entire life, literally our entire life.
She's also open-minded.
Yeah.
She's not negative. she's. I mean, as we were saying about the footsteps in Bignor House, the cottage there, what she could hear. That's astonished me when I was a little bit older, because she was open to the aspect of the paranormal, and she knew there was something wrong there. She just knew it. She was very calm. She's like her grandmother. They were open-minded, but they followed a narrative that you don't speak about these things then unless you were asked.
Yeah. So we had two. We have a mother, and we had another mother, which was our grandmother.
Yeah.
So both of these ladies were basically, grandma was mum and mum was mum. So we and our grandfather
and being twins as well. We were very they were very.
Oh, that's in Africa. That's in South Africa.
They were very protective of us. I mean,
yes, and let's cut for a moment, because at a certain point you left this beautiful, stately home. Did you relocate directly from there to South Africa, or was there a middle ground still in the United Kingdom?
There was a middle ground, which was a place called Arncott that we moved to temporarily. My stepfather's father, who was a very good man, our paternal grandfather, he was as Irish as they come. He was more like a father as well from the other side of the family to me and my brother. We'd stayed in his house, and it was decided by my mother and stepfather that we would then vacate to South Africa. And I remembered when we were in Arncott, and after Ronnie and I both recall this, of when we were removed from the opulence of Bignor House, it broke my heart. And I remembered feeling like I wanted to travel, that I wanted to go somewhere. So this new enterprise of South Africa appeared very appealing, and we then vacated to Vanderbijl Park, which is 50 miles outside of Johannesburg. And what we then did, we thought that we would be in the company of rhinos and elephants and giraffes. We were very disappointed, Peter, to find that it was, another concrete jungle.
But one thing that interested me about Africa, I've always, when we moved there, I mean, we loved it. I mean, I did love it. I mean, I always refer to it as, strangely from you guys, Snoopy Land, because where we lived, Vanderbijl Park, the houses were all, this is very enchanting for us, very different from the UK. The houses were mostly bungalows where we were, and they had this chicken wire fencing around a lot of the properties, or metal gates. It was completely different from a wooden flats you have here. And all I remembered there as well was the sprinklers constantly going, so it's so hot. The sprinklers in the garden, it was very enchanting. But Snoopy Land, and it was enchanting. Yes.
Yeah, we used to go to the drive-in movies there, and I remembered that one of the movies that scared me to death, that my brother and I would lay on the top of the car in the driving movies because you had the sound by it, was The Towering Inferno. Still our most amazing films.
It's funny, they didn't have any PG out there.
Many American movie stars being challenged or...
they didn't have any PG. I mean, when the elevator...
Scenic elevator
came off its tracks, and then the people were, there's no PG. We just were mesmerized by it, weren't we?
Petrified.
Yeah.
But I it gave you an appreciation at that point of films and of movies and of music, because I found the LP, the record of the Towering Inferno music that I got, and
Williams,
and also because we collect soundtracks, we love music. And what was the artist's name?
I think the film, even though we were young, we're about maybe seven.
I think seven.
I think the film subconsciously opened up drama, because although it was realistic, we knew it wasn't real. We knew it was it was like a play, But I think that opened up drama, the spectacle of disaster and drama. So it must have hinged in there somewhere, having watched that film.
And that's also where, because nothing paranormal happened there, we were only out there for 18 months
I was about to ask you that. A question having nothing to do with the paranormal. Is it Vanderbijl Park, the name of the
Vanderbijl Park? Yeah,
Yeah.
Vanderbilt Park. Yeah.
Was this a purely white enclave, or were you mixing with black children as well?
No, we actually had an OC, which is a housemaid called Maria, who was the most beautiful lady that you could ever meet. She looked after me and Ronnie when we were out there, and our very, very, very younger sister. But one of the things that made us laugh was that when we'd moved out there and we'd got Maria, my mother came home one day and heard all this splashing in the bathroom, because Maria had an outer building which had all the facilities, and we were obviously in the house itself. And she came in and heard all this splashing, and she went into the bathroom and she found Maria, bless her heart, walking up and down in a bath full of water, and there was some clothing in there, and this is her way of washing. So mum had to sack her every weekend, but she was always there, God love her. So my mum taught her. She was only very young. She was a young lass, and
she was lovely.
She was lovely.
Maria was lovely.
The school that we went to was
Oliver
Lodge, and it was separated, which, you know, and very different in those days. But
of course, it was apartheid.
Yes, our mantra, because we wanted to play with the other kids on the other side of the playground, and you couldn't. It's just the way things were back then. But it was very sad. But the mantra at Oliver Lodge that we both remembered was, Oliver Lodge is our honoured school, the school of maroon and blue. Doom spera spera, that is our margin for young ones and old ones like you. And we had to sing that every single morning.
I couldn't remember the rest. Do you know, Peter, all I remember was this horrendous time there where we had obviously flasks of soup. Now, I can't, it's very vague.
Bizarre.
I was so frightened of even the teachers then, because they must have been very formidable. They were, because the cane was still in effect. I should imagine it was in effect then, even when we came back to England. But I remembered spilling all this soup everywhere, all over the place, all over my shorts, everywhere. And I was horrified. It's this damn soup and caterpillars. Do you remember the caterpillars?
Yeah.
You used to collect them and have them like pets, and, you know, feed them and look after them, and then they turn into these beautiful moths and things. But it's very, I don't think I like the school much, from what I can remember. No.
A question for you. In the year and a half that you lived in South Africa, did you actually have an opportunity to get out into the veldt, into the wilds to a degree, to see animals, you know, on safari or anything like that?
No, unfortunately, we didn't.
Well, do you know, it's funny. I've recently looked it up on Google Earth, and I found the area where we lived. It's absolutely vast. I mean, my goodness, when you look at Africa, you think, good Lord, it's no wonder we didn't go, because evidently it was costly as well. It would have been, and Mum and Dad were both working, you know. I mean, so it was the time, but the vastness of is incredible. We look at a little pinprick and think, oh, right, so that's an easy trek. But when you look where the other animal resorts are, my goodness, no, Kenya and all that.
We did visit Johannesburg, and I remembered it. I was amazed. We both were amazed. I think we were taking on one of our birthdays, and we were both bought our first watches, and we'd gone into this huge building with a almost like the Towering Inferno, but the
Johannesburg House.
Yeah, it went up, and I remembered we both had our first watches and our first fishing rods.
I couldn't read the time on mine. Could you?
No, not.
I couldn't tell the time, but it looked nice on my wrist.
It did look very nice, yeah. And and they used to have these huge outdoor swimming pools, where we used to go, and lollipops and the smells in the shops. It was all very magical. But that in South Africa was the only thing that happened in terms of paranormal experience, if you could label it that, was that I almost drowned in one of the big, huge, adult-sized swimming pools. Where, and I had an experience then where as I was, I don't know what happened. I just became tired and felt very ill when I was treading water. I've always been a good swimmer, and then the next thing that happened was I remembered seeing myself above the water and a bald-headed man, God love him, diving in, and then finding myself in this other beautiful place, and then that looked more real than here. I didn't see any people. And then the next thing I remembered was standing looking at myself laying on the floor, the man helping to bring me back round, and
Wow.
our friends Philip and Stephanie and Ronnie being a bit upset. And you know what's really weird, Peter? In those days, we got back up and got on with it.
Of course.
And,
Yes.
and we didn't have any of the
Yeah.
dramatics or anything.
Yes. Maybe
but-
that's a healthier attitude too. At a certain point, you relocated back to England, and where did you settle then?
This was the magical time,
The magical time.
because we returned to Tatchbrook Road in Middlesex, where a lot of the family lived there. We lived together. They had two huge houses,
Three stories.
3 stories. They adjoined each other, and we moved back with our grandparents. And I'll never forget when the jet, this jumbo, when it landed, it was snow. And Grandma and Granddad were there to pick us up and take us home. And there was something absolutely wonderful about those memories. You know, when we were taken, because our mother left Africa with just 3 of us, the kids.
Did you both start to actively read at about the same time, or was one of you, reading earlier than the other?
That actually happened when we located back to Middlesex, where our grandparents lived, and my Uncle Bob had built another bigger house that was separate from the one, but they were together. Then we went to Luton, and we went to Luton. And in that time, I know people say, "Oh, Luton's not a nice place," but remember, we're going back a very long time.
Yeah.
And our reading started and our drawing started when we were attending a school before we moved to another house, the Victorian house, where things happened.
Hart Hill Junior School.
Hart Hill Junior
I'm
School.
afraid to say I was a very slow learner, Peter. I was bone idle at school. I just wanted to play, and this is absolutely honest, but my reading was atrocious. And perhaps wouldn't surprise you to know that I didn't start reading until I was really learning it, until I was about 8. So it was terrible. And the Janet...
Me too. Same age. I'm quite dyslexic, primarily in the world of numbers. But my folks had relocated us to a county when I was about 7, with a school district about a year ahead of where I'd come from. And I felt very self-conscious that when I arrived, I was putting letters together to form words and the other children words to sentences. But by the time I was 8, I got it. And from that point on, reading has been a huge part of my life. Do you remember what kinds of books both of you were first drawn to that inspired your imaginations or fired up your thoughts of what you might be as adults?
Yes.
They weren't certainly the Janet and John books. We had these horrendous educational books. Yeah, I hated them. I absolutely loved them. They were so stereotypical. You know, Dad in the garage, Mum in the kitchen.
We had the equivalent here. Yes, See Spot Run.
Well, I loved. My mother would buy both of us comics, and one of them was 2000 AD comic. And I remembered, I think it was a weekly comic. I would go out every Saturday up to the shop to go and collect my comic, and I loved it all in pristine. And we'd obviously, been interested then in the way that dramatization was done through the world of comics, and also books. I loved books. At that point, I knew, because the school that we attended in Hart Hill Junior School, they had a book club where you would give so much money a week and then you would order a book. And I remembered when the book came, and it was a book all about the sea and the animals in the sea, and I loved the feel.
There was an excitement about getting it.
Yeah,
it was the smell of the book, the colours. This in Hart Hill Junior School, this is where our imaginations began to fire.
Yes.
With the reading, I mean, I remembered the book I broke into with Mum's lovely patience. It was Pavlov the Penguin. And Pavlov the Penguin, I will never forget Pavlov, because he helped me learn to read. It was that book when it just happened. It was just like, oh my God, I can understand the words. It was Pavlov that helped me, rather than the dreaded Janet and John books. No disrespect to the publishers, of course. No disrespect, but I hated them. But Pavlov, I loved him. So this Penguin I attribute to goodness, because he was the one who helped me break into reading as a kid. And I was late, really late.
I loved also Tove Jansson, the creator of the Moomins book. I remembered in one of the school lessons that our treat on a Friday before we turned in for the weekend was that the teacher would read a chapter of this book. And when I'd gone to a jumble sale at the school, I found the book was on there after it had been used, and I bought it for 5p. I read that book and I was enchanted by the illustrations of the Finland author who was the J.K. Rowling of her time. They still publish her book, they still reprint them. And I've got all her books about her life, an incredible life. And I knew at that point that I wanted adventure. We both wanted adventure. We wanted to get away from the world. Yeah.
Yes. At this point in your lives, number one, Philip, had you had any experience of mediumship, for lack of a more descriptive term, where somebody who was not there was there? Somebody who had passed made their presence known to you, or is that something that came later in your life?
That came much later in my life, but that came much later. That came in my late 20s when our maternal grandmother had passed over, who, by the way, was psychic. And who my brother, aged 13, had an incredible experience with her at their house in Middlesex with me and Ronnie, because Ronnie and I used to spend all the available holidays with our grandparents, me and Ronnie.
Christmases and
summer holidays and Easter. And we knew that she was psychic. But in those days, Peter, it was all undercover. It was all behind curtain talk.
Yes.
But our grandmother displayed incredible signs of knowing, and she almost hinted to us both that she was from somewhere else, if that makes sense, that her family was a little bit of a mystery. But that didn't come until much later. But when I was a kid, aged around about 11, 12, I remembered buying this little China dog, and I know people will laugh at this. It was in the jumble sale when I got the Tove Jansson book. I think it was all but 5p. You could buy a lot for 5p in those days, you know. And it was a China dog, and I used to put this China dog on the top of my wardrobe, and I would talk to the dog. I would communicate the dog, and I would tell the dog all of my problems. And maybe on a subconscious level as a kid, I didn't realize perhaps that I was gearing up to developing in this form of communication with something that I thought people think is inanimate or doesn't exist. And there were plenty of tears when it dropped and smashed and I couldn't put the thing back together again. Yeah, and that is another. I mean, we all have strange episodes. When you go back, you think, well, wasn't that very strange?
Yeah. Ronnie, you have grown into an accomplished artist. Your artwork, especially capturing images of beings from another dimension, another universe, informed by your imagination, informed by reality, the detail work. And now you work primarily, on computer graphics, but like any of us, you began with, pencils, crayons, watercolors, whatever. At what point in your life did you realize this is something I'm good at and something that I enjoy and that I want to pursue? Because there had to be a time when you realized you were considerably better than other children around you in that respect.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say so, Peter. The age I was, I would say, really geared at the age of 14 or 15. It really geared. And I had no... We had an art tutor at school, and she was lovely, Mrs. Rose. She was absolutely lovely. But you see, the trouble is we're colorblind. We're both colorblind, so that did cause.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I tell you what I once painted, and this is absolutely true, using acrylics because they were what I used heavily, but I did use oils as well, but they were too messy for me. But in my grasp to understand images and things, I painted this horse for someone.
Yeah.
I painted it Peter. I painted it green, and because it depends on the shades. You see, if the green is dark,
Yes.
it looks brown to me, or if the brown is too light, it will look green. So I painted this green horse. But the wonderful thing about digital technology is, and this is where it really opened up for me, is the fact that it has a set color wheel. So the primary colors, I know basically where they are. So if you move a hint off that, it's still that color. So it could be the shades, So it was, ostensibly speaking, I would say 13 or 14.
Yes.
It really began to pick up.
Yeah.
Before that, I mean, I was lazy. Before that, we were acting. We were doing our little plays at home.
Chapter
plays with the record player going, and we'd act in front of each other. So the creativity was driving from that.
We used to turn our room into a TARDIS. We used to turn our room into a TARDIS and believe that we could time travel. And what's really kind of like difficult here is that when you in later life explore what we call the paranormal, people immediately jump on the bandwagon and say it's because you're interested in science fiction, it's because this and that. But
you're imaginative.
As though you should be a blank canvas that shouldn't have any experiences when you have the experience. But when we were 14, I remembered the first book, the manuscript that we sent to Hodder and Stoughton publishers. It was called Uncle Mad Builds Madeline, and we still have the manuscript to this day. We cut out card. We created this mad professor who built this robot called Madeline that went AWOL. And our grandmother sent it off to the publishers. And I remembered that Grandma phoned us in the morning, and she read out the rejection letter, and dear Lord, we both sat on the steps of the house crying.
You were crying.
I was
furious.
This is the real harsh journey of authorship as well.
Yes.
That you found that I was so hurt because I assumed that the publisher would see our vision, but looking back now, they were very sweet. They were very kind.
Well,
I was just saying that.
As is noted, in doing my homework for the show, that I guess it was the Magnus book, which was well ahead of its time, and the story that's attached in terms of not just the success, but somebody who's up there as your number one fan, a personage who we all know of. You too may well be eligible for the Guinness Book of Records as receiving the largest number of rejection letters from publishers before you received an acceptance letter. Between 700 and 800 rejection letters.
Right. We kept them all, Peter. We have everything filed away.
Yeah.
We just kept trying.
I didn't know there were that many publishers in the world, and all of them without vision, of course. But then again, think about J.K. Rowling, who received many, and the story of her acceptance by a small academic publisher in America about to go belly up, Scholastic Publishing, which I remember from elementary school because they put out like a child's little newspaper called The Weekly Reader, and they were about to go under. And the success that they had, to put it mildly, having the vision to purchase the rights to the first Harry Potter novel and move forward from there, allowed them to become a juggernaut in American publishing and have enough cash, this is absolutely unheard of, to build from scratch a brand new major office building in the Soho part of New York, the first new building built there in many decades, and helped to revitalize the neighborhood and that aspect of American publishing. But I'm off on a tangent here. The world of films for you guys, for me as a film maniac, I'm in love with so many aspects of British filmmaking, be it the Ealing Studios or the great British comedies, people like Alec Guinness and Peter Sellers. Was this a part of your childhood?
Yes, absolutely. We loved the old Miss Marple films with the late Joan Hickson. I loved all of those. I have the box set. In fact, my brother and I have hundreds of films that we collect because The Equalizer,
great,
original Edward Woodward.
Yes, I met Edward Woodward when I was young, when he was before He did that show that was very popular here as well. He had done a Broadway play with Beatrice Lillie. I'm that old. I remember seeing her on Broadway as certainly well advanced years, and got to meet her as well. I'm off on a tangent here. British filmmaking is responsible for some of the great classics in haunting and paranormal film titles. Do you remember any particularly impacting ones for you all? Because we're so familiar with Hollywood's world of spooky films, but any particular British films that reinforced or focused you on the paranormal or haunting or afterlife or what have you?
John Wyndham, the Midwich Cuckoos or Village of the Damned.
Oh boy, yeah.
And also The Day of the Triffids.
Yes, so, wonderful.
Yeah, and also Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. We used to watch that all the time. Yeah. And I remembered my brother and I, when we were in Luton, when we moved then from the flat that we were in, which was beautiful. We then moved to a Victorian house in Luton, and Ronnie and I would go to the library every Saturday morning to do our own projects. And mine was on Roswell and the Loch Ness Monster, and Ronnie was looking into the robots. And one of the programs, I remembered I loved books even then. I remember when I joined the library, I brought so many books back. They ate, my arms ached. I just loved books. I'm ashamed to say that I brought the books back that because they were the biggest and the fattest books I could get my hands on. Got me into some trouble sometimes because I never returned the books when they were meant to be returned to the library.
You'd overstep the stamp.
But I remembered getting a book by Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. I did enjoy the programs, but unfortunately, both Ron and I have said this, it would end on a downer because Sir Arthur C. Clarke would finish by saying, "But is this what we're looking at?" And of course, it was like someone bursting a balloon.
It filled this pretty balloon to begin with, and we were all like,
wow.
He'd filled this huge, lovely, pretty balloon and let it go up, and then he'd stick a pin in it afterwards. So
it's like, there we are. So in terms of the paranormal, I think we were more interested in like Robert Stack's Unsolved
Mystery, sure.
And I loved those, and I really found those really very interesting and so informative. I think the Americans, they have much more of a real wonderful range of such programs, whereas England is a bit more upper lip, a bit stiff upper lip. The way that they see it is not quite as appealing or as embracing as the American within their market and the way that they produce programs. It's completely different.
Let me ask you about this photo. How old were you guys, and what was going on in your life at the time?
I will tell you that photo was taken when we had.
How old were we?
We were aged. When was about 18 or 17?
17, I'd say, Peter.
17, because my brother and I, as aspiring writers, we weren't getting published, but we had the help of a brilliant author called Eileen Pickering, and she used to write Western books that were published by Black Horse Westerns, a big publishing company. And she helped my brother and I by for many years. I mean, she's ill now, bless her, but she used to help us craft our writing, and she ran this magazine called Writer's Own Magazine, and she published our very own cottage industry imprint book called Professor Harold and Co, and that was in 1988.
Wow!
So this picture was, and this is
she was our tutor.
She was,
and she was. I mean, it's ironic. When she published her Western books under one of the publishing houses in London, Black Horse Western, she changed her name to a bloke, so she called herself Mark Falcon, so she published these books, and she helped us craft our own work with her expertise. She was the one who shaped our literature. So Eileen Pickering is wonderful because she shaped our own. She helped us craft our own writing.
Yeah.
I mean, she was like an old school teacher.
Yeah.
She'd slap your hand and say, no, you don't do that. You don't put that paragraph there. You put it here. And the full stops go there. The punctuations. She was wonderful.
And also, it was David Wiltshire. He's a British science fiction author here in England that we've never met, but communicated with for years. He wrote loads of science fiction novels, and they made one of his books into a TV series that one of the Doctor Who's producers did called Nightmare Man, which was from one of his books called Child of Vodya. Now, he put us in touch with Eileen when we were very, very young, around about 17 years of age.
Well, hold that thought, because believe it or not, we're coming into the end of our first hour.
Wow.
Yes, I know. Missing time experience. This is Peter Robbins with my guests, Philip and Ronald Kinsella, on Meanwhile Here on Earth on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, and we'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Are you still at it?
Yeah, I need more speed.
This baby's fast.
My dad's fast. He's scary fast.
You really think you could beat him?
Yeah, because I drink more tea than he does.
Yeah, right.
You know, pal, it's the tea that makes you go. Oh. Hey, Dad.
You know, kiddo, you have to drink a lot more tea to be faster than me.
Drink the tea that makes you go. Life Change Tea. You may not need as much as Dad. You never know. GetTheTea.com. Log on to GetTheTea.com.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
And welcome back. Peter Robbins here. Meanwhile, Here on Earth is the show, KGRA Digital Broadcasting, and delighted to return with my two guests in England, Philip and Ronald Kinsella. And when we left off, I was about to ask you, at what age did you either separately or together see your first UFO?
13. It was with our grandmother, and it was very haunting. It was a summer, and we were staying with them. Of course, Granddad worked then for KLM at Heathrow Airport. He loved KLM. He always spoke so highly of them. It was a good company. And it was one of these days where he was out working during the summer holiday, and Grandma, Philip, and myself were out in the back. And this object that we first thought was a balloon, it was silver, approached from the rear of the garden. It came closer, but as it was moving swiftly towards us, I realized upon looking, both Philip and I realized, looking at this thing, it was not a balloon. And as it approached, it was quite breezy. but it seemed controlled, and it was very fast, and it just arrived and then just stopped dead over Grandma's head. Now,
when it came past the tree,
yeah,
and then came overhead.
It was very, very haunting. And when, I mean, we were astonished. I mean, it was like something from Doctor Who. I mean, we looked up at it, and we didn't know if Grandma was aware of it. I think she was, but she tried to pay no attention. But we pointed up and said, "My goodness, what's that, Grandma? Look, this thing was spherical. It appeared like a dirty chrome, but the dirtiness could be attributed to the reflection.
Yeah.
Now, as to height, it was evidently level with the second story of the house. So it was above Grandma, and it just hung there.
Is that the size of a football?
About the size of a football.
Very close.
Yes, it was.
And I had a good look, Philip and I. It had no cord. There were no markings, no seams, no humming, no vibration.
Nothing.
It just hung there. But we got the distinct impression, Peter, I did as well, that it was watching us. It was like, as I've termed, an electronic eye.
When we asked Grandma what it was, because she was aware of it, she said, the fairies have come to take a closer look at us. Now, Grandma would always use the fairy part to tell her when we asked her how she knew things that the fairies told her. And we knew that she was covering this. But what was strange was that we wanted to have a really good close look at it. I mean, it was close anyway. And when Grandma was just about to move forward, the object then moved towards the windows to the second floor and then went up to look through the third floor. And then when it went over the house, we all ran into the house. We had to climb this beautiful winding staircase up. We had gone into their room to the front of the house, which they were huge bedrooms, and we saw it disappearing into the distance. And what happened was that night, where the bedrooms were located, because you walked into this hall and this grand staircase went all the way up and round with the first floor, then the second floor.
It was open.
I could hear Grandma in those days. She would have her telephone on a special telephone table with a couch, and she was talking to a family member. I can't remember who in the family she was talking to, but mentioning this. But what was strange was that that was it. No one said any more about it. It just kind of like just disappeared in memory, not with us.
Yeah, classic. Did you see others from that point in your life separately and together of different configurations?
Yes, we did. And
I never saw that myself, the sphere. We've seen slightly different things.
No, you saw the sphere when we were the Grandma.
Yes, right, but I never saw it again.
No,
not that. That was very strange, Peter. Very, very bizarre. As I said, it was haunting. You know, a summer's afternoon. You're with your grandma, and it just arrives and just hangs over you. This spurred me to wonder. The people have suggested, even back then, which was ridiculous, that it was military. Well, I'm not denouncing how technologically advanced the military are. They're clever. But in 1982, anti-gravity mechanisms, no. And also, another point is that why on earth would the military be observing a grandma with two insignificant grandsons?
Exactly.
You know, this, and I knew, the funny thing is, when we were looking at this, it was alien. It was alien. It was not of our world, and I knew that. And it also caused me to reflect when I was much older to research the Foo Fighters, the famous Foo Fighters, not the band, as we know, for your lovely listeners, your audience, but that followed aircraft during the war. And these could be attributed to electronic eyes or cameras or drones or probes.
But you had an experience then in 1982, in the winter of 1982, because people get confused with twins, because I had an experience in the winter of 1989. Ronnie had an experience in 1982.
Yes, and you brought up a valid point. Our experiences were 7 years apart. We were born, came up with this. We were born 7 minutes apart. So whether that holds significance or not, we don't know. But it's very bizarre.
So Peter wants to know about the experience that you had in 1982.
And Philip is the older of the two of you?
Yeah.
Yes, so I am.
He's obviously the wiser, the more wizened, the more aged. I'm sure you respect your elders, Ronnie, and
I do.
Treat them with deference. Yeah, continue on. But tell us about your 1982. incident.
Yes, that was at the Victorian House in Hazelbury Crescent. That was up by the football grounds. The orb, or the electronic eye, as I refer to it, was seen in the summer, and we made no comparisons or connections with what happened next. Basically, I was snatched up from my bed in the dead of night, in winter, taken up to this dark thing hanging over the house. Now, I couldn't discern what this was, this shape. It was huge. It was just hanging there. Now, as a kid who had no interest in UFOs...
That's one of the things I was curious about. Yes, keep going.
Yeah, no, I wanted to play and just have fun. But you see, it snatched me up. And I found myself in this wheelchair, very modern-looking wheelchair. It wasn't like ours. I was in that thing, and there was this strange man in this... I would call it craft, but I can't say. It was just hanging there. It must have been some vessel or something. It seems like when you say that, you're trying to make it fit. I'm not. I'm just giving it to a black and white. I was paralyzed, partially paralyzed. Now, these men, the three ahead of me, were standing before an operating table. I got that straight away. And as to the room, it was medical. It was squat. But these were white. These guys were not people. They were covered from head to toe in a modern armor, some kind of covering, but their faces were rather like our gas masks worn in the Second World War, but they were modern. They had lenses, and I couldn't see their eyes. They were covered completely.
How many?
I knew there were three ahead of me. They were just standing there watching. As I found I was partially paralyzed in this chair, and this was not sleep paralysis. This is absolutely real. This was happening.
Ronnie, were they proportionally human or more exaggerated, like a gray?
No, they looked like men in uniforms.
Okay,
but they
continue on.
They were taller than us. They looked very tall. There was one behind me. I couldn't see him because I was paralyzed to a degree, so I tried to turn, but I just knew there was someone behind me, and I was right, because he spoke. And I'll never forget the first words he used were, "We're going to perform an operation on you, Ronald." Now, when he said my name, I flinched because he knew who I was, but I didn't know who he was. And the disconcerting thing about this was that it was all medical. So I immediately got the impression they were going to cut me open. Now, when he spoke, people asked me, did he speak verbally? Well, I couldn't see their mouthpieces. I don't know whether it was telepathy or what. I just couldn't see him. And I pleaded with him, I do not want this operation. And I had an impression it was to do with the head. Don't ask me why. They were going to do something or put something in there or do something. It didn't come at the time, you understand. It was just like being cut open. But later on you hear about implants and things. So I don't know what they did. And I pleaded. I wept before them. I said no. And I must reiterate, they weren't nasty, but they were commanding. He was the one in charge. I knew that straight away. No, this is for your own good. It has to be done. But I'm going to promise you, we are not going to harm you. We will not harm you. Now, I believed him at that point, but it's just the thought of this damn operation. And he leaned over, but I could see his hands. I wished I'd had foresight to count the digits on them. You know, I didn't count his fingers. But of course you wouldn't. You're so horrified. But he took an instrument from this utensil rack beside the chair and picked it up. And it was like a rod with a nodule on the end. It was very bizarre. He took the nodule, the globe, the sphere of it, and he pressed it there. Now, what's interesting, I've never had an operation in my life. I did a year ago on prostate. I had to go under. And when they put me under, I noticed, interestingly, where they put the needles was exactly the same place where he pressed the nodule. I went out like a light on this thing in front of them. And the next thing I remembered, I was ejected from it. So evidently they had done whatever they were going to do.
Yeah.
This raises certain issues with me. I've covered this. Certain issues of why they can't keep you anesthetized, why you have to see them and all that. But they ejected me from it, and I was being returned to my bed. So I went through the house, through the loft, back into the room, and I was then placed on my bed on my back, but I felt the bump of the mattress. That was horrible because this was happening. There was a static electrical wave of us coming down. Strangely, I didn't feel that going up, but I did coming down, as if every hair on my body was standing on end.
Oh.
And then they ended this with a goodnight kiss, a horrendous conclusion to what they thought they would paint over as a fairy tale.
The communication to you, was it verbal, or were you hearing it in your head telepathically?
I don't know. This is confusing. His voice was British. His voice was British. I would say I've never forgotten it. It was British. It was acquired, but authoritative. I knew that I couldn't argue with him. Nothing was going to stop him.
Yes.
So I don't know, Peter, but it was as real to me as if he was really speaking. You know, I heard the words.
And then
So
you had
about what time relatively do you find yourself back in bed after all of this?
I have got no idea. I mean, we had a tiny clock in our
Day
room.
or night?
Oh, it was night. This was all at night. Yes, of course. I beg your pardon, Peter. It was at night. But how they ended this was horrendous, because when they put me back, when they put me back on the bed, they projected, and even as a kid of 13, I knew this was some kind of clever projection. They projected on the ceiling, and this didn't make sense to me until much later. They projected on the ceiling the huge head of a Cheshire cat. And this was not your ordinary Cheshire cat. This was like, it put Alice in Wonderland's cat to shame, because it was monstrous, the most evilest thing I'd ever seen.
A holographic.
A holographic representation of this thing. It was wavering. It was, although I'm colorblind, I gather it was electric blue. He was wavering, but this was given as an illusion to make out he's actually moving, but he wasn't. But they were giving it the impression of movement.
Have you ever tried to capture it in a rendering?
I did, yes, only recently, and the doctors as well with the lenses. But I couldn't, my rendering of him could never capture the pure horror of what he was. It was only and then that was it. He vanished. He was glaring at me or looking at me, vanished.
So at a moment, at a certain point, you then wake up and it's morning and you have a conscious memory of everything that's happened?
That's how it happened afterwards. Yes, I was terrified and fell asleep.
And he told me about it, because
how soon after? That morning?
Yes, because then what happened was Ronnie was started to put a guitar I had against the door. I mean, we as kids, we didn't realize that anything of the further research that we've done today of how theoretically these beings can take people, but he was stuffing books on the back of his stuffing books in his back before he went to bed, and putting an old guitar on the door, so if anyone would come in, it would make a noise. So
ironically, they took me through the ceiling.
Yes,
it was they really screwed me up big time.
But you had a fit at school soon afterwards.
Yes, funny. Now I never placed any of these points together until much later in life. It was sensible to keep quiet about it, because he lived in a time where, even Grandma being a medium, no one could talk about it. Granddad wouldn't. We didn't know what Granddad would react like, or our parents, so we kept quiet. I sensibly did with the doctors. That's why I've referred to them as the doctors. I don't know what they were, but they were very strange. But I had a fit. It wasn't directly after the encounter. It was perhaps, I don't know, a week, maybe 2 weeks. I was sitting in geography, and I'm physically fit. Apart from being colorblind, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Philip and myself. There wasn't then. And I was sitting in class, and I did say, didn't I, when I had this, when they were telling me what they were going to do, I don't know why, I got the impression it was to do with the head. God knows why. But in geography, I had these 4 slashing pains, absolutely like someone slashing your head, 4 of them. And I collapsed onto a pupil, and then I rolled onto the floor and started fitting for 2 minutes. Now, they pulled me out, but they asked me if I'd like to see a doctor. No way. No way, because it's you, isn't it? So I never connected this to them, whether it's something they had done, was there residue from it, or... But the cat, I realized...
Did they stop something from happening to you?
Is it possible they could have prevented death?
Death, yes.
I don't know.
Philip, upon reflection, I am as sure as I can be that you remember Ronnie telling you about this that morning.
Yes. Yes.
Upon reflection and talking back and forth about it, what did you make of it?
Well, I was terrified because it's not the sort of thing that Ronnie would come out with.
Yes.
I mean, we were into our records and our comics and our books and our adventures. Sure. But he was very scared. And I remembered at that point that, there was another teacher at Stockwood High School that we then went into, called Mr. Charles, a lovely gentleman, a pipe-smoking gentleman. And we had another teacher that we were fascinated with called Miss Horton, who was Australian. We loved her. My brother used to do chapter plays on her because she was so amazing as a lady. I don't know, we just have these adventures in our mind with her, But we must have told Miss Horton, because then she got in touch with Mr. Charles in the school, and Mr. Charles lent us his entire encyclopedia of paranormal magazines that he collected for the duration of the soon after. So we knew who we could trust, and who we could tell. And there are others, unfortunately, and during those times especially, that any mention of that, you were considered ridiculous, out of your mind. Yeah.
The ridicule you were opening yourself up to.
Yes. Yeah.
Now we have 7 years before you, Philip, have your abduction experience. Do you remember either of you other UFO sightings or incidents in that interim period of years?
Yes, we have. Most of them have been catalogued by the newspapers. I have all the newspaper cuttings in boxes, but every time that we had these experiences and they were reported, the press unfortunately would say that they're writers of children's books.
Sure.
You know where they're going with this.
Yeah.
So the last, not jumping here, but the last sighting that we had with the 3 amazing UFOs that were hovering over our house on the 9th of April 2016, I refused to report it to the authorities because I thought, no, I'm not dealing with that. But there were instances where UFOs had been seen continuously, and we never asked for it. It's not like we wanted anything to do with it. It almost seemed like, and this is the other thing you have to be careful about, it's because they think they're special. Well, in my books, everyone's special. I don't care if you're rich or poor, famous or not. We're all on the same level.
I'll just conclude the cat too. 30 years later, this happened nearly 40 years ago now with the doctors. Next year will be 40 years it happened. But the cat, I realized it took me a long time to decipher or discern what he might represent. You see, if because I had obviously disturbed them all, they had planned it to be the way it was, where I was conscious to see them, they had instilled a fabricated fantasy, so that when I go and see a psychologist, if I did, and told him about the Cheshire Cat, he'd say, "Oh, hang on a minute, you've been down the rabbit hole. You're just getting confused with Alice in Wonderland. You're just confused." Yeah. So what they did was very clever. If that's the procedure of what they did,
well observed. Yes,
the intentions.
Yeah. Isn't that an interesting gambit that they set up? It is in you now. By this point, Philip, you have started to have mediumship experiences where you are having experiences with people who are passed on.
Yeah, now that happened in my late 20s when our maternal grandmother had sadly passed over with cancer.
So had this happened yet at this point? Was your grandmother was still with you at this point?
She was very much still with us because
then by 1989, when you had your experience, your grandmother was still alive as well?
Correct, that's right.
Okay, then let's go to that. What set the scene and tell us what you remember and what you experienced.
I remembered all of it, and it's a little bit long-winded, so I'll try and cut it down as much as I can. Basically, we then moved from Luton to a village called Marston Mortain, and we lived in quite a large house in a cul-de-sac. And
where was the village near?
Marston Mortain. The village is not about 5 miles outside of Bedfordshire, where we are now.
Okay, continue on.
So basically what happened in the winter of 1989, I did not make a record of the date or the time. I had no wish to. And during that point, I didn't realize that the events that transpired would become as they are today. I had no wish to reveal anything. That's another story entirely. I literally came home from work. I didn't drive then, I do now. But I used to get a train to work, and on the way home, I'd walk a mile or so in countryside and then get into the home. So I walk into the house. My brother and my sister is there, along with the dog that you showed in the picture called Benji. That was in the property that we were then in Marston Mortain. And I just walked through the glass doors, through the hall, and my brother and I had a study/bedroom. We shared downstairs, a very big room, and there was a shower room. Then you had the lounge and the kitchen diner, the conservatory, and the garden at the back. So there's a reason why I'm saying this. So I'm walking through the hall and through the glass doors, and then through the glass the glass kitchen doors, because everything's all glass, and there's a reason behind this. So I go into the kitchen and I lay back against the counter. I don't know, we were just talking about stuff. I just wanted to, it was around about 7:15 at night, because that's the time I would get in. And my sister is to my far left. My brother is standing in front of me in the dining area, so he can't see into the hall, but he's facing me. So we're chit-chatting, and then all of a sudden there was this strange change in atmosphere. It felt electric. And one of the things I realized was that our dog, who was sitting in front of me, got up and he started to growl. And this change in density, became stronger. It was like heavy. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Ronnie, who's standing in front of me, I mean, this has all been documented, yes. And he looks up as though possessed. He looks up, he reaches his head up to the ceiling, and he says, "There's going to be an earthquake, or Grandma's going to die." And I'm looking at it thinking, there's no earthquake, and Grandma's not dead. And all of a sudden, as I'm looking out into the hall, where the frosted glass doors to the front of the building are, there's a light that's coming up. And I thought, oh, Mum's coming back from work early. Maybe she's finished. She's finished because she did lates then. And then as this light came up, and the dog starts to growl even more, and my brother is seemingly suspended in front of me, and my sister, I don't know what happened to her, what was going on there. This light grew in intensity, brighter and brighter, and then all of a sudden, the shock of seeing the glass bend like it's jelly, and this small being, as ridiculous as it sounds, that was all clad in black, about 3 foot tall, diminutive in size. It had an oversized head that I assumed was a helmet. It just stepped through the glass, which had become pliable, and then as soon as it stepped through, it ran towards it disappeared into our study/bedroom, and the glass returned to normal. My brother snapped out of his state completely, and I'm shocked. A part of my brain is thinking, the dog is starting to really bark now, and I feel so scared. I'm like, what has just happened? There's an intruder in the house. And I reach behind in the drawer to get the biggest knife, and I shout, "There's an intruder in the house." And as I said that, I saw this, whatever it was, this small being run from our room across the hall and up the stairs. Of course, where we are in the kitchen, you can't see the stairs because it's separated by a wall. We checked the house. There was nothing there. Later on, I broke down because I thought I'm going mad. I don't understand this. And this then led into what people call the abduction in the early hours of that morning, because I found myself floating, waking up in the hall. It's all dark now, where the being had come through. That's where I woke up, where it originally came through, floating on my back, 3 feet off the floor, my head facing the glass doors to the kitchen, and being pulled, forcibly pulled. And I'm waking up thinking, I can't move. What am I doing here? So as I'm going through the door, I'm thinking, well, how am I able to get through solid matter? And how is that possible? And going back to what happened earlier, this is a question I think that led me into serious research many years later. But anyway, I'm being dragged through the kitchen door. I can see the dog asleep. And by the way, the dog died of a brain tumor not long afterwards. We're not attributing to what happened. We have no proof of that, but he did die of a brain tumor not long afterwards. As I'm being pulled through the conservatory part of the house, through the glass doors there, and out through the other glass doors that leads into the quite large garden that we had back then. And I'm being moved round, and I'm looking up, and I'm seeing all these UFOs, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're real. They're real. What is the problem? They're all here. And there is one object that seems like a circular silver, kind of like a dirty grey silver craft that wasn't moving. There didn't seem any lights on it. And at that point, I felt myself, as soon as I observed it, I was pulled towards it. And I felt so scared, I was going to hit it, and then bang, I then don't remember anything until the other part, because there's 3 parts to this, where that was degrading and unfortunately had seen to a lot of ridicule and, so I then find myself on this bed, naked. The room is hot, and it's very, I wouldn't say dark, because there was a place ahead of me that was covered by a wall where there was some light coming through, so I couldn't see beyond that point. But I'm strapped down on this bed. I'm naked. I'm waking up thinking, this is weird. I shouldn't be here. And as I turned to my right, this is weird. There were 3 what I can only describe as reptilians. And I literally was like, really? But they were horrific. And they were standing together to my right as I could bend my head round to look at them. And I was so shocked. But even more so when I found that they were covered in this like steam or mist or whatever it was. And they were moving backwards and forwards in a strange gait. I couldn't understand it. But the horror then of then discovering that in the lower part of my anatomy, something had been placed there, and I could feel it within my bowel or my stomach, and it felt inside organic. And at that point, I just lost it. I started to scream. I wanted it taken out. But these beings, whatever they were, had no empathy. I was just literally a slab of meat. So once I'm screaming and yelling, I'm trying to make this as short as I can without missing valid points here. This creamy colored gray, I'd never seen anything like it, but it was more cream. People put them as gray, came forward. It was very mechanical in nature. It was very, again, without empathy or emotion. And I realized that these 3 guys, I call them the guys now, I can laugh about it, a sense of humor here, even though people say, oh, there's shock. But you've got to poke fun of yourself sometimes, I think, to make it easier. They disappeared, and immediately I felt this thing retracting. People have said, did you see it? Well, I felt it, and it's almost as if it went down, and I was released. The grey then orders me to dress. I dress. I'm ordered to follow it. It takes me past that point that I could see from where I was. I just wanted to get out of there. I didn't understand what was going on. I was fearful. I was petrified. It took me to the end of this corridor. I could see there's some lights, but they were covered by mist. And it brought me to a wall. And the wall then disappears. I had the image of a tree in my head. I don't know what that meant. And I could see the village from a height. I could see it was becoming very early morning. And where our conservatory was, the last part now, which is incredible, was a smaller disc. And I thought, oh, you are joking me, right? So this grey is looking at me, and I'm getting this impression that it wants me out. And I'm like, you want me to just leave? You want me to just drop out? I didn't understand. And I started to cry because I thought heights aren't my thing. And immediately I was pushed out and then floated. And there were 2 greys beside me that I was told not to look at when I came down to the ground. And this is the final part, and may have put some of the dots together in future research. As I'm coming down, I'm really annoyed. These 2 beside me have gone. I'm not allowed to look back. I'm not allowed to look back. And in front of me is
this was all basically telepathic information put in your head.
It felt like that. So when I come to the ground, the smaller disc is above our conservatory, and underneath that is a being I will never forget. He was like a grey. He was more stocky built. He was dressed in a one-piece khaki uniform. He had knee knee-length black boots. He wore a pointed hat on his head, but his face was the meanest I've ever seen before. He looked smart, if I can use that word, smart. But his face was like really angry, and he just had his arms folded. And I'm looking at him, and I kind of like recognize him, but I don't know where from. And I want to punch him. I'm like, you're angry with me. You're angry with me. What have you just put me through? He just looked like this, really angry, and I felt it. So I thought, I'm going to ask him a question. I endearingly call him Noddy, that was created by the famous British author Enid Blyton, again, the J.K. Rowling of her time. But he didn't look like Noddy, but if you've seen animated plastic move, that's quite frightening. So I think, well, I'm going to ask Noddy a question, and you're going to answer this. I was so angry. I wanted to punch him, but I couldn't move. I said, how the hell am I able to get through locked and bolted doors? How is that possible? This theme of going through solid matter. And he looked at me, his eyes shocked. Then his mouth opened, and he started to rasp an electronic voice that sounded like the voice synthesizer that my brother used to have for our ZX81, a voice box that it would talk like a machine. And as soon as it started to talk, he raised his head upwards to the underneath of his craft, and I then found myself coming very quickly through the doors to the conservatory, to the kitchen, through the kitchen to the hall, and then through to my room, and then bang, I immediately wake up. I've got a nosebleed. I need to sort myself out in the bathroom. Now, what's interesting is this. I had 3 triangular marks behind my right ear. I suffered constant nosebleeds to the right nostril that they were going to cauterize, but left it when it stopped. I had 3 marks on my right arm, and I found it difficult to walk for a while.
Yes.
And also a future researcher called Pierre Sabac has tried to look at this case, and he suggested, do you realize, he said, that earlier when you saw the figure coming through the door in your house and your brother had gone into this trance and lifted his head up to the ceiling, that the other being at the end of it was doing the same thing, as though somehow scrambling information or somehow overriding something on some level. So from that moment, I continued to try and work out what had happened to me. I think we did speak to Jenny Randalls. I think she phoned us up, the British ufologist and author. She was very interested in our case. But the really big shame about all of this was the embarrassment that I had to go through with regards to it. And I remembered that I didn't want anyone to know really about it, but this got out in a local UFO group who got in touch with a television company. And this is where I was very biased, and, people will understand. Did they? No. And of course, then I was working on theories about how they do what they do. And people, if it's called an alien abduction, I was mystified, because I'm thinking, well, I always assumed that an alien abduction would happen on a physical level of integration, but this brought in parallels of the soul, consciousness, and a larger picture of what possibly we could be dealing with, that opens up a whole new can of worms. So that was there may have been another abduction. I'm not talking about the UFO sightings or the sighting we had, the experiment we did at Rendlesham Forest back on the 8th of June 1998. But there may have been another one, but some strange things happened before that. I kind of thought I knew, but I don't have any recall of that. And that's all from memory. I didn't lose any memory of what happened. I remembered everything.
I want to first thank you for being so forthcoming. It was very important to me, and I think many of our viewers and listeners, to hear you relate this account with the understanding that in your mind, as I get, there was no question that this was really happening and was as real as our chatting right now, that there was no chance of it being some strange psychological aberration or something. Again, it's accompanied by a lot of physicality in terms of, marks and things left with you. And this had to open up a whole new level for you of questioning this phenomena and of deepening your involvement in UFO research. I knew our time would fly by. We're still doing okay, but I want to jump subjects right now and go back to Ronnie and ask you how you and your brother came up, when it happened, and over the time that it developed, because it began at a time, I think I understand, when you were still working in conventional art materials, and then it was picked up once you had the digital skills to render these things on computer. The genesis of Magnus the dog, and this is going to take us into the illustrations and the story I had alluded to early on about a very particular fan of yours. How did Magnus come about?
He started initially as a dream. Philip and I, we had seen K9 on Doctor Who, but he was like a pet we've always wanted to have. I know we had Prince as kids, but it's funny, you know, we've always wanted something that could be extremely loyal, that you could just switch off when he got to be a pest, or you know, he could be a superhero, all wrapped in one. So in 1993, the genesis of Magnus bore out concepts of a cartoon strip. I thought we would make him very funny and lovable, you know, but I know he's a robot, but the idea was he was with a family, and in this cartoon strip we had done quite a number of them. I had humorous scenes of him, like, I'll give you an example, where he's reading the newspaper, and in there he's saying that he's read that a rhinoceros in a zoo has unfortunately lost his horn. So to save disgrace, he pinched an ice cream cone, turned it upside down, and stuck it on the end of his nose. Things like that, you know. Or there's another one where he's pointing at a mirror, and he's looking at himself, and he says, "You sexy beast, you." The mirror shatters, and he just turns around and says, "Mirrors are two-faced." So he started off, I don't know what sort of character, he was loose then, but we did all these comic strips, and then we decided they weren't working. We'd sent them off to the national newspapers. They were wonderful. They were very, very sympathetic. They said, you need to work on these, because that was pen and ink. So everything then, we didn't have digital as we have today. They were all pen and ink. And they were sent to them. And one newspaper was particularly nice. I think it was it the Daily Star?
The Daily Star.
They'd sent us a cartoon strip they were publishing of theirs to show us exactly what size and diameter it would be, you know, the style. But they wished as well. So this is how we started as initially a comic strip for kids.
Then it developed into books.
Yeah,
we self-published our own little books.
Because we failed there. We developed the book aspect, but then you couldn't publish anything unless you had an agent or a publisher. You're out. You had no chance. So it took a long time to develop this pooch into what he is today. And through this drive of publishing him in fiction, it's the only way we could get him out there. He went through several incarnations. To begin with, he was with the Queen. He was like her bodyguard, but we realized the Queen was very, very extremely supportive of that. But we realized...
Now, I'm putting up the first picture that I have. This is obviously a digital rendering, but yes, you're about to say that at a certain point you decided that Magnus would be a protector of the Queen. Was it kind of a generic fantasy queen, or were you thinking of a particular queen at the moment?
It was our present Queen.
Yes.
In fact, we'd gone so far as to send the Queen the books, which she accepted, and was very supportive. I mean, very encouraging. This was years ago. This was in 1991. No, this was it must have been 1996, I believe, Peter, 96. We started doing these little booklets with him with the Queen. And we realized when we were doing these that we couldn't really use Her Majesty. You can't use that in a book. So we decided to change his mistress into a young fictional princess. And so it went from there, where we developed this book called The Space God. It was first called the Pharaoh's Curse, but we decided to change it to the Space God. There he is, yes.
And also the Magnus the Micromut, the original books that we did, that we still have, that we self-published. We would send the monarch a copy each year, and what happened was that we were informed that Her Majesty was pleased with our work and she loved the letters that we sent, and this continued on for about 27 years. And we were very honoured, because even if our letters were sent to the palace in Buckingham Palace, they were then forwarded to Balmoral or wherever she was in residence.
This picture here, Peter, he has a blast coming from his bottom. So we decided, for humour, he would have something we deemed or termed a bum blaster. So he could turn himself into a rocket. If he needed to get somewhere very fast, he would engage this rocket, but it's very, very unsteady. And he has a lot of accidents with it. But this is part of the humour of him. He's like a bag of tricks. He has bits and pieces in him that can pop out, like an extra hand or something. So the idea we built on his character and his physique in a way. He has changed the incarnations from pen and ink to digital, but the digital is wonderful in that it gives him a beautiful contrast to what we would call trying to make him real, so trying to make him look realistic as best we can.
I think the other thing as well with regards to Magnus was that the model or the creation of him was something that we wanted to, promote to kids and to adults. And what was very sad was that everything that we tried with regards to the dog, nothing ever came off from it. It just failed.
Failed. We had
totally.
It was the local papers had done a feature on the first booklet, and they had published pictures of him, and this spurred a video game company to approach us. With the intention of making him back then in 96 or 7, I think it was, into a video game for the PCs, the early PCs. It was to be a CD-ROM game, but it never made it. So it was something that it could never be through this gentleman, which is fair enough. So it all fell to pieces. So back to the drawing board again with him, and we came across an agent that didn't turn out too good, respectfully. I'll put that respectfully. So he was back to the drawing board again. But we've revived him recently in a book called The Magnus the Micromut of the Space God, which is an extraterrestrial being. It's based in Egypt. His mistress, the princess, who they argue a lot. They have this banter. The dog and her argue. He's cocky. She has a captain, a young, handsome captain who looks after her, but the dog goes with them, and he feels he's her protector. So there's a lot of backlash between the captain and the dog and the princess. She has to stop them from bickering all the time, which adds emphasis to the story. It adds to the character, he can't stand the captain. The captain hates him. So you have this sort of this struggle going on with the characters as they go to Egypt to explore a new crypt that's been discovered, which she goes, Athena, which we call the Magnus's mistress, goes a step further, and she actually wants to see what's in this crypt, and of course, opening it up, it opens a can of worms.
Ultimately, Magnus comes to the Queen's attention. She reads the books. She likes them, and she starts to contact you. And she doesn't contact you once. She contacts you repeatedly over the years, and it culminates in your getting to meet Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth.
Yes, and that happened on a very strange occasion. And one of the occasions that we remembered more than anything was that when her motorcade, after we'd seen her, unofficially, of course, she recognized us both, because we came to a function that she was attending, and she was very sweet and very nice. But when the motorcade was coming up, my brother and I had walked away from seeing her, and we were walking along this bridge, And at that time, my brother and I smoked. We thought we'll have a fag each and we'll have a cigarette. So I said to Ronald, it was a very long bridge. It's across Bedford, and it was all cordoned off to a degree where the road was slides part of the road. So I said, it's awfully quiet. When I looked back, I could see the Queen's motorcade coming. And I said to Ronnie, for goodness sake, Ronnie, get rid of your fag. The Queen's coming. So we threw our fags over the bridge. And what was really very special, and there's no drama, there's no intrigue, we're all important. What was really beautiful was as the police motorcade came forward with the Queen's Rolls Royce coming forward, the driver of the Rolls Royce, because my brother and I were dressed identical, not for attention, but because we just did them. We were smart with our ties on and our long dress.
Well, we still do now.
Yes, yeah, okay, Ronald. And we were standing on the side of the road, the path, and the driver, the chauffeur, pulls the car over so that we are about this far away, and we can see the Queen in the back of the roller smoothing out this blanket on her lap, and her lady in waiting is looking at us both, and then she touches the Queen, and the Queen looks up, and then she looks at us both, and she points, she goes, and then she went, and she was just like her grandmother when she went.
Peter, what's funny about that is when we saw the motorcade coming, it's like two naughty schoolboys having a cigarette, and it's on its way, and I didn't know it was coming that way. We had no idea. I said, oh my God, it's the Queen. It's the Queen that threw the fag. It's the Queen. It's like two naughty schoolboys being caught having a smoke round the bicycle shed.
It is a moment caught in time that I will never
forget.
Love it.
I absolutely love it.
Years ago, and it was. I remembered. I floated home. We both floated home, thinking, "Oh my goodness me!"
Peter, it wasn't for panache or anything of nature. We're not like that. No. But it's just like if she featured in our books, we'll have to go and see her so we can find her. She's going to this thing, and then you get caught smoking. I mean, it couldn't get any worse, could it?
Oh, it's like your grandma telling you off. It's like
very few people have bragging rights of having Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth shaking their finger at you in mock punishment. Going from that moment to the work that has really put you on the map as a artist and book illustrator, Ronnie, for me, are your renderings of these beings, again, informed by your imagination, accounts. I find, first, as somebody who trained to be a painter, who taught painting for years, but always in conventional manners, you've given me a new appreciation for digital creations. And these images that you have created are indelible. They're absolute powerhouses. They're beautifully rendered. They're haunting. They're frightening. They're fascinating. And I just want to compliment you, because even if we weren't friends, I would be such a fan of your work. And you've used this to illustrate your own books by you and Philip, other books, as well as, they're out there in the world as works of art as well. They're just total powerhouses as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you very much. The idea, Peter, behind them is when I start them, I fail at design. I have an idea, and this is interesting, as you yourself, being an artist yourself, Peter, I always try and plan them out, but it never works. I just have to sit there. It's like hit and miss. There is that one. There is of Kukulkan, the Mayan deity, the fabled feathered serpent, who I believe was real, by the way. I don't think he was ethereal at all. I think it was corporeal. But the art, I mean, the digital age has allowed us to supply lighting and texture in a way that I could never have achieved with acrylic. Certainly not being colorblind.
I get
certainly
it.
Being colorblind, being colorblind. I mean, the digital wheel, because it's set as I said, it gives me an enormous benefit in using the right color tones or trying as best I can to get close to it. Sometimes I miss it, but that can be forgiven. But I want to thank you for your lovely compliments of my work. I'm really honored by it.
It's totally earned it. And you said something earlier that flashed me back to before my days at the School of Visual Arts, when I was studying art at university and trying to make that decision whether or not I had the courage to focus in full well and just dedicate myself and train as a painter. I have a particularly aware sense of differentiations between colors. And I remember at one point taking a full semester course at the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut called Color. And Mr. Cuneo is our professor, and he was a Yale Art School graduate, very prestigious. And what we did for an entire semester was we worked with a set of colors. It was a product called Colorade, and I think it was 209 like 6x9 or 7x5 silk screened sheets of paper, every single one of them in a different shade and variation. And we would use them in all manner, but I ended up leaving that course. To this day, I can still look at a shade of green or blue or orange and give you a pretty close percentage range of how much of the pure red, blue, or green is influencing this particular mix. In a sense, the exact opposite of the situation you historically find yourself in. More when you were talking about that point where you actually understood the color wheel. And it was like a Rosetta Stone in a way, in my mind, that breakthrough. If I understand this wheel, I can compensate for my color blindness. I found that absolutely moving, absolutely fascinating.
Thank you very much. I mean, we both had the tests when we were kids because they found a problem in chemistry at school.
Sure.
So we had to then go to our GPs, and they confirmed that it was colorblindness. The annoying thing is, Pete, they didn't say anything about it. It just said, right, you're colorblind. You failed the test. We've had many of them, and that's it. Later on, you find out it's actually, with Philip, myself, and Philip, it's actually the shade, as I said about the browns and the greens and the blues are the worst. Some blues I can tell. Some browns will be more difficult because that could be to me a green or a brown, But thank you very much, and I appreciate what you mentioned about the fabrics you memorized with the hues of them and how much color tone was in them. That would be absolutely impossible for me to do, utterly impossible.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted to. This is something that we've discussed in past. We are old school as far as H.G. Wells' brilliant classic War of the Worlds, which has been done in so many ways. In film, in updated treatments, in book form, of course, and in illustrations. And you and I are fans of I guess it's the 1951 or 2 version with Gene Barry and these particular craft. And I also loved your rendering of where is it here? Oh yes, of the Martian walkers. I like all of us, am a huge Steven Spielberg fan, but found the Tom Cruise version of the film overblown, absolutely, unnecessarily overly violent. And I don't mind the body counts building up in films. I'm fine with violence in the right spirit, but it was a bit much. And again, here's to the 1950s version of the craft. Going into some of the books that you guys have done separately and together, again, a perfect example of using one of your brilliant renderings here on the cover of The Digital Demon. And it's another very important area. I can't think of 2 better people who are so brilliantly in touch with memories of childhood in the best sense, etc., to bring this subject to young people in this manner. And believe it or not, again, we're really coming into the home stretch here. So I wanted to ask you, do you have one website, or do you have a website, Ronnie, for your artwork, and guys, another website for, your collective books or whatever? Because I want you to give it, or them, to our listeners right now and viewers.
Well, we're actually creating a website at this moment, and it's a shared one that we're doing, and it's going to be called the Kinsella Twins.
And it's a combination of the art and the UFOs, Peter. A combination. We're going to make it nice with some designs in there as well, concepts.
Yeah, so it's a journey that has been incredible, and we are so grateful and so honored to have met so many wonderful people and being embraced now within a UFO community of brilliant, like yourself, of brilliant minds, where we can really work to theoretically try to work together to work out what is going on. And of course the Holy Grail is all of us working as a unit together as a united mind, and it's amazing. It's incredible. I think it's an amazing journey that we're all having, that we're all experiencing.
Yes, it's true. We are all in it together. My only regret today is that we could literally do a series of shows and still have an awful lot to cover. And at some point in the future, I very much hope you'll return to Meanwhile Here on Earth. Meanwhile, once you get your website up and running, you let me know so that I can get information out on the show and in other ways. Until then, people can either friend you or visit your Facebook pages to learn what you're doing and seeing what's up with you guys.
Yes, the Facebook and the normal media channels. I mean, my brother and I have never been one for the limelight. I mean, we're more like, if you could put us into a school of brilliant minds, then we would rather be there. And dusty old books with knowledge and information, that's where you'll find us. So I mean, that is the place that I love, and I think working with groups of people and connecting with people is one of the most beautiful things that can happen. And also being understood, because as twins we were very into our own world, into ourselves, but being understood. And
people can access Twin Souls, your monthly radio show, how?
Through they could listen it to the downloads on the podcast, which is linked through the Paranormal UK Radio Network. That's the big network system that deals with many other shows connected and affiliated with them.
Okay, I can hardly believe it, but farewell, gentlemen. We will be in touch as always and regularly during the week. Philip and Ronald Kinsella, thank you so much for being my guests tonight on Meanwhile Here on Earth. This is Peter Robbins. We will return to you next week here on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Stand up for what you believe in. Stay safe and be kind. See you next week.